My research following cities and places in alignment all over the world led me to finding out how the original advanced Old World Order was transformed into the Globalist New World Order. How did we arrive at the world we live in today? Was cruelty, great suffering, degradation, racial and religious division our inherent nature and destiny? Or was humanity at one time highly advanced, and then the original order of society turned upside down, after which time we have been the subjects of a vast human and social engineering project, not for our best interest, but that of negative beings who want nothing but total power and control over everything? I firmly believe there would be no mysteries in history if we had been told the true history. My original research on this topic began in 2016 after I found a star tetrahedron on the North American continent by connecting the dots of major cities and extending the lines out. Then I wrote down the cities that lined up primarily in circular fashion and got an amazing tour of the world of places I had never heard of, with remarkable similarities across countries. As a result of doing research on these alignments, the story of an advanced, unified worldwide civilization, what happened to it, who did it, and how it was done, unfolded in front of my eyes. I have come to believe as a result of my research that there was a hostile takeover of the Earth's grid system after a deliberately caused cataclysm that resulted in a worldwide flood of mud which wiped out most of the original civilization. I think pockets of original people existed in underground locations, as well as the beings behind this, until enough of the original infrastructure was dug out of the mud flow to restart civilization. Then the Earth was repopulated through human and social engineering, primarily beginning in the 1830s. More on this later. I believe that negative beings were behind the cataclysm and hostile takeover, and have executed and implemented an elaborate multi-generational plan comprised of fallen angels, reptilians, archons, demons, and other negative extraterrestrial races with a negative agenda towards humanity, the creator and creation, all of whom have been interfering on Earth. They had to do it this way because in a free will zone like Earth, the human beings who live here have to give their consent to choose whether to follow the light or the dark. The only way they can accomplish this acceptance, however, is by outright lies, deception, and duplicity, because if people knew the true agenda of these controllers, the majority of humanity would never ever accept this. What I think is that they found a way to create a new 3D time loop between the years of 1492, the year of the fall of Granada in Spain and the first voyage of Christopher Columbus, and 1942, which was midway through World War II and the year of the Philadelphia experiment, were the boundary years of a new 3D time loop called Rome. The new, what I believe, occulted timeline was somehow inserted and everything was grafted onto the existing infrastructure on the Earth and falsely attributed in the newly written historical narrative. I have speculated that the Great Frost of Ireland was the result of a rip in the fabric of space-time caused by the Philadelphia experiment. If that sounds out there, then why is there a time-traveling naval vessel in the field of information in the form of a 1980 movie called The Final Countdown about the USS Nimitz going back in time to the day before the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th of 1941? The Great Frost of Ireland took place between 1740 and 1741, during which time the Irish population endured 21 months of bizarre weather without known precedent that defied conventional explanation. The cause is not known. I think this rip in the fabric of space-time allowed for non-human souls to incarnate in human form, because in 1744, Mayer Amschel Rothschild was born in Frankfurt, Germany. He established his banking business there in the 1760s, marking the start of the international banking family and ultimately the central banking system. It is interesting to note that when Mayer Amschel Rothschild died in 1812, the Free City of Frankfurt in the Holy Roman Empire had become the Grand Duchy of Frankfurt in the Confederation of the Rhine after the Holy Roman Empire was dissolved in 1806 during the Napoleonic Wars. Prior to the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire, the imperial throne of the Holy Roman Empire was occupied by the House of Habsburg. Also called the House of Austria, the House of Habsburg was one of the most distinguished and influential royal houses of Europe, and in addition to Portugal and Spain, produced the kings of Bohemia, Hungary, Croatia, Galicia, as well as the emperors of Austria, Austria-Hungary, and Mexico, and principalities in the Netherlands and Italy, also known as the Ancien Regime, or Ancient Regime. The male line died out in 1740 with the death of Emperor Charles VI, and as a result of the War of Austrian Succession that took place between 1740 and 1748, the Empress Maria Theresa had to concede Habsburg lands in Austria, Spain, and Italy to other powers as part of the terms of the 1748 Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle, which also confirmed the right of succession of the German House of Hanover to the British throne. This is significant information that I will tie back in as I go through my presentation. Then on February 6 of 1748, Bavarian Illuminati founder Adam Weishaupt was born in Ingolstadt, Bavaria, Germany. He went to a Jesuit school at the age of 7 and was initiated into Freemasonry in 1777. Weishaupt's radicalism got him in trouble with the ruler of Bavaria, and he fled to the Duchy of Saxe-Gotha-Altenburg under the protection of Duke Ernest starting in 1784. Weishaupt published a number of works about Illuminism and the Illuminati there, and died in Gotha in 1830, which is also interesting to note because the city of Gotha is the place of origin of the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, which produced the ruling houses of Europe. More on this in a moment. It is interesting to note that the revolutions of 1830 took place in France, Belgium, Italy, Brazil, Poland, and Switzerland, the same year Adam Weishaupt died in November. These revolutions led to the establishment of constitutional monarchies in France, with King Louis-Philippe I of the Habsburg House of Bourbon as the monarch and last king of France. Notice the differences in complexion of these portraits of him, findable in a search, with the fourth one appearing to be a photograph of a man with a darker skin complexion. The two-tone facial coloration of the portrait of King Louis-Philippe I reminded me of another one I had seen like that. I had seen it with the two-tone face of King Charles III of Spain, shown here. Then these are existing portraits and statues for comparison of King Philip II of Spain, also ruler of Portugal, as well as England and Ireland for a time, and the son of Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. These two portraits of Emperor Charles V are also available to find in an internet search, again with similar facial structure between the two portraits, with the tilt of the chins and the similar clothing. The 1830 revolutions in Europe also led to Leopold, the son of Duke Francis of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld, which soon became the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, becoming King Leopold I of Belgium. One of King Leopold's nephews, Prince Albert, married his first cousin, Queen Victoria, in 1840, who was the daughter of Prince Edward of England and Princess Victoria of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld. Another one of his nephews, Ferdinand of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, married Maria II, the Queen of Portugal, and their son Pedro V of Portugal ruled from 1853 to 1861, at which time he was said to have died of cholera or typhoid fever, along with several of his brothers and other members of the royal family. The significance of the marriage of Ferdinand to Maria was the joining of the Portuguese House of Braganza with the German House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. This is its coat of arms, with two green wyvern supporters on either side of the insignia, and the wyvern tail within. As a matter of fact, the wyvern tail section is found in the coats of arms of not only the Duchy of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, but in other European royal houses it's seated, like that of Hungary, Belgium, Bulgaria, and seen in Prince Albert's personal coat of arms. I could do a deep dive down into the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, but for the purposes of this presentation today, suffice it to say that starting with the War of Austrian Succession in the 1740s, it certainly appears that the different wars and revolutions were all about bringing down the once stable hereditary ruling houses of the ancient regime going far back in time, whose identity was misrepresented and whitewashed in our historical narrative. New royal families replaced them from the same line out of the Saxe-Coburg and Gotha lineage, with the images of the wyvern, an unambiguously malicious predator in its coat of arms, which therein signifies war, envy, and pestilence, and new forms of government were established, which led us to today's world. More on this later. Other things I found happening starting in 1830 as well in our historical narrative include German Jewish immigrants starting primarily around 1830, arriving in cities all along important waterways like the Mississippi River and Ohio River valleys, setting up shop, monetizing all available resources through the creation of the new economy, including the development of different industry sectors over time, and providing the currency and financial institutions for the new economy. National banks were established between 1863 and 1935 that were authorized to issue national banknotes to banks throughout the United States and its territories. Starting in the 1830s as well, alcoholic beverages became widely available and were promoted for consumption to the general population. Also starting in the 1830s, there was a population explosion of poor people and parentless children, and prominent people, read elitists, in both Europe and America, organized charitable aid movements with a stated mission of helping people find their way out of impoverishment, providing guidance, advice, and at the same time, providing the bare minimum of charitable aid. The prevailing social attitudes of the mid-19th century blamed people for their poverty and applied the notions of worthy and unworthy poor to charitable aid. I even found the house of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha in the Republic of Texas, starting in 1842 in the form of the Mainzer Adelsverein, or Nobility Society of Mainz. One of the founding members of the Adelsverein was Ernest II, the Duke of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, and the older brother of Prince Albert. The Nobility Society of Mainz was organized on April 20th of 1842 as a colonial attempt to establish a new Germany within the borders of Texas through organized mass immigration, and land was purchased via land grants from the Republic of Texas. It was a colonization campaign said to have lasted only until 1853 due to a large amount of debt. On a different subject, I believe pre-existing infrastructure was dug out of mudflows by immigrants from different countries and not built by them, and/or restarted in order to be able to use whatever form of infrastructure it was, like canals, railroads, and streetcars, among many other things, and not by the people who took the credit for building them, like the Wabash and Erie Canal in Indiana, with a groundbreaking said to occur in 1832. Its construction completed by 1853 between Toledo, Ohio, and Evansville, Indiana, we are told it was made immediately obsolete with the opening of the Evansville and Crawfordsville Railroad to Terre Haute that opened the same year, and that only 2 flat barges made the entire trip. Dubbed one of the wonders of the world in the 19th century, construction of it using immigrant labor was said to have started in 1836, with the tunnel being hand-dug and black powder blasted, and that more than 6 million bricks were used in the building of it. We are told that after all of that work, and after nearly bankrupting the C&O Canal Company, that by the time it opened in 1850, it was already rendered obsolete by the railroad. John D. Rockefeller was born in 1839 in the United States, the progenitor of the wealthy Rockefeller family, and considered to be the wealthiest American of all time. Along with Henry Flagler, an American industrialist and major developer in the state of Florida, Rockefeller founded the Standard Oil Company in 1870, setting the stage for the mass production of gasoline-powered vehicles in the early 20th century. There's mounting evidence there had already been a worldwide free energy system in existence from the original civilization, including electric streetcar systems, which included residential routes, like this historic photograph in a Charlotte, North Carolina neighborhood. Electric streetcar systems at one time were in existence everywhere, and not just limited to a few places here and there. With the mass production of gasoline-powered vehicles as a result of Henry Ford's assembly lines in Detroit starting in 1913, within a short period of time, like as soon as 25 years, electric streetcar lines were replaced with cars and buses, like the Lightning Route in Montgomery in Alabama, said to have been in operation for only 50 years, from 1886 to 1936. This is the original Pennsylvania Station in New York City, said to have been built between 1905 and 1910, and demolished in 1963. Why build a massive building of heavy masonry and demolish it after only 53 years of use? This makes no sense, and was the fate of many of these original railroad terminals. In summary of this part, I believe there was a deliberately caused cataclysm that allowed for the consolidation of great wealth and power into the hands of a few in a hostile takeover of the Earth's grid system and humanity. They created a whole new culture to control us through addictions, distractions, and money, and they do not have humanity's best interest at heart, and I believe they do not have human souls. The original culture was that of the ancient and highly advanced Moorish civilization, which existed until relatively recently. We are still using their enduring architecture. This is Bow Bridge in Central Park in New York City on the left, and El Paso High School in Texas on the right, and their respective dates of construction in our historical narrative. Now I'm going to talk about the Moors and who they are because of what happened to them. The first step in liquidating a people is to erase its memory, destroy its books, its culture, its history, then have someone write new books, manufacture a new culture, invent a new history. Before long, the nation will begin to forget what it is and what it was. Quoted from Milan Kundera, a Czech writer who went into exile in France in 1975. He published the Book of Laughter and Forgetting, and it was about how the Czechs opposed the communist regime in various ways. Now I'm going to introduce the Moorish paradigm, with the definition of paradigm being a way of looking at something. Once I came into the awareness of the Moors and a worldwide unified civilization based on sacred geometry, aligning everything with each other, including heaven and earth, everything I had questions about started to make sense. The discovery of the North American star tetrahedron and planetary alignments led me to a deep understanding of the Moorish paradigm. All of the infrastructure on the earth carries the same signature and hand of design, from ancient times to modern. Moor, M-O-O-R, equals Mu-or, M-U-U-R, equals Mu, also known as Lemuria. The Moors go back in Earth's history to Mu and represent a continuous civilization through Atlantis and up until relatively modern times. Instead of the historical narrative we have been taught, I am seeing that there was an ancient global unified civilization, the Moorish Empire, and that all of Earth's infrastructure was built by the Moors. Since this is not in our historical narrative, we don't even question what we are told about it being built by other cultures or civilizations. Moorish masons of the ancient ones were the master builders of civilization, and their handiwork is all over the planet, from ancient to modern. All of their Moorish science symbolism was taken over by other groups claiming to be them, falsely claiming their works, or piggybacking on their legacy, or given a darker meaning by association with certain things that were not the original meaning. Marco Rodin, inventor of the torus-shaped Rodin coil, unlocked the key to vortex-based mathematics, the template for the universe, from studying Baha'i scriptures. From this he came up with the number 9, which Baha'i scriptures and other ancient texts spoke of as the most omnipotent number. He drew a circle as depicted in the top left picture, with the numbers 1 through 9 drawn around it. From what he discovered, an intriguing number system was contained therein. This led to awareness that this number system, based on the relationship between the numbers 3, 6, and 9, was the mathematical fingerprint of God, and on the left is a symbol for vortex-based mathematics. On the right is the Moorish masonry symbol that has come down to us as a symbol for Western Freemasonry. Another example of taking over the symbolism of the Moors is the Great Seal of the Moors on the left, with the eye at the top of the pyramid relating to the pineal gland and mankind's journey to reconnect with our divine natures, and the symbol on the right, on the back of the US $1 bill, commonly associated with the New World Order and Big Brother. What is the true meaning of Islam? Islam in its original form is about mastering self in physical form, as well as applied sacred geometry and natural law. It was nothing like the weaponized form of radical Islam we see today that is playing such a divisive and destructive role in the world that is not in accordance with humanity's best interests, by design I might add. The Moors were the custodians of the ancient Egyptian mysteries, according to George G.M. James in his book Stolen Legacy, and still are to this day. Cities, sacred mountains, lakes, and other places worldwide are aligned on a flower of life pattern, and all have the same characteristics. They appear to be bringing the heavens to earth, and aligning earth to the heavens. I realized there was a code of keywords that cover up ancient infrastructure by calling them natural features. Words like red rocks, canyons, mountains, creeks, and rivers are just a few examples among a host of landscape features. There are precise alignments that occurred worldwide from ancient times until relatively modern times. This is Keyhole Rock at Pfeiffer Beach on the top left at Big Sur in California. The light comes through the keyhole arch perfectly during the winter solstice time of year in December and January. The Durdle Door near Lulworth, England in Dorset on the top right also has a solar alignment during the winter solstice period. This is Mesa Arch in Canyonlands National Park in Utah on the bottom left showing a solar alignment. And Turret Arch, perfectly framed through another archway at Arches National Park in Utah on the bottom right, where we are told there are 2,000 natural stone arches at least. I consistently see intentional terraforming of the earth from ancient times by master builders to create harmony, beauty, and balance between heaven and earth based on geometric principles. Now I'm going to show you only a few examples of the symmetry, proportion, and alignments in architecture, but I have found that this is the case all over the world, including the United States. The Palace of the Kings of Majorca in Perpignan, in southern France on the top left, Oxford University in England in the top middle, the Alhambra in Granada, Spain on the top right, where the Moors have a significant presence in our historical narrative, the École Militaire, perfectly framed through the Eiffel Tower's archway in Paris, France, the Hungarian Parliament building framed perfectly through its archways of the Fisherman's Bastion in Budapest in the bottom middle, and St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City through this archway on the bottom right. Here are some examples of buildings perfectly aligned in archways in the United States that I found in my research. Seen through the Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Arch in Hartford, Connecticut on the top left, a framed view of the Memorial Church at Stanford University in California on the top right, through the Jefferson Memorial Arch of the Parish Courthouse in Gretna, Louisiana, and the Washington Monument framed between two columns of the Lincoln Memorial, and then you see more alignment of heaven and earth and the reflection of the Washington Monument in the reflecting pool. These precise alignments did not just happen at certain places and certain times. It occurred worldwide from ancient times until relatively modern times. More examples of what I am saying to follow here, but this is the Manhattan Bridge in Brooklyn, New York, with the Empire State Building perfectly framed by the bridge foundation. Many know of the famous solar alignment that happens at the ancient temple of Angkor Wat on the equinox, the time of year when the sun crosses the plane of the Earth's equator, and day and night are of equal length. But what about the not-so-famous alignments photographed at the Statue of Liberty on the top left, Glastonbury Tor in England, depicted with a solar alignment in the top middle and a lunar alignment on the top right, and lunar alignments at the Empire State Building on the lower left, the U.S. Capitol Building in the lower middle, and at the Faisal Mosque in Islamabad, Pakistan, on the lower right. I found the same phenomena of lunar alignment, particularly the full moon, occurring with lighthouses, like at the Pigeon Point Lighthouse in San Francisco Bay on the left, the Walton Lighthouse in Santa Cruz, California in the middle, and the moon rising over the Navesink Twin Lights in Highlands, New Jersey on the right. The Taj Mahal in India aligns with the full moon as well. The famous story of how the Taj Mahal was built goes thus. It was built between 1631 and 1648 by order of the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan, in memory of his favorite wife. And I find it noteworthy that the Hui Mosque in Yinchuan, China, and the Taj Mahal in Agra, India, have some identical design architectural features. The ancient advanced Moorish civilization that is missing from our collective awareness was all about harmony, balance, beauty, sacred geometry, and unity with each other in the universe, and connecting with one's higher self, source, universal self, whatever word you choose. It was a civilization where each being knew it was sovereign and yet an integral part of the whole collective. It was all about aligning heaven and earth in the fullest expression of human potential that there has ever been here on earth. I have come to believe from my research that the template for the 12 tribes of Israel was an integral part of how the original ancient worldwide civilization was laid out in balance and harmony between each other and the universe, and that Israel was not a specific geographic location. And that the word Sion with an S in the King James Version of Psalm 76, verses 1 and 2, in Judah is God known, his name is great in Israel. In Salem also is his tabernacle, and his dwelling place in Sion. With its metaphysical meaning of Sion, defined as high power, virtue, courage, and strength, was a state of being all of the people of the original civilization strove for, to become united with one's divine self. Next, I will explain why I think Zionism is behind the creation of the world we live in today, and who I think the Zionists really are, and it's much more than what we have been told. First, a review of what we are told about Zionism, a movement to return Jews to a Jewish homeland. The Rothschilds purchased Jerusalem in 1829 and subsequently acquired considerable land in Palestine in the 1800s and early 1900s. The First World Zionist Congress was held in Basel, Switzerland in 1897, which was convened by Theodor Herzl for the small minority of Jewry in agreement with the implementation of the Zionist goals. The Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion was first published in Russia in 1903, after the First World Zionist Congress, describing a Jewish plan for global domination, but was widely called an anti-Semitic forgery. In 1917, the Balfour Declaration was issued by the British government during the First World War, announcing the support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people, written by the Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour to Lord Rothschild, a leader of the British Jewish community. Great Britain had been granted a colonial mandate for Palestine and Transjordan by the League of Nations on April 25th of 1920, which lasted until the formation of Israel in May of 1948. A League of Nations mandate was a legal status for certain territories transferred from the control of one country to another after World War I, in this case territories that were conceded by the Ottoman Empire following the end of World War I in 1918. Despite growing conflict between Palestinian Arabs and Palestinian Jews, Truman ultimately decided to recognize Israel. David Ben-Gurion proclaimed the establishment of the modern state of Israel on May 14th of 1948, and President Truman recognized the new nation on the same day. On the same day the new state of Israel was proclaimed, the British Army withdrew, and gunfire broke out between Jews and Arabs, and Egypt had launched an air assault that evening. The Central Conference of American Rabbis, or CCAR, declared in its 1937 Columbus Platform an affirmation of the obligation of all Jewry to aid in Palestine's upbuilding as a Jewish homeland, and its assertion in the 1976 Centenary Perspective that we are bound to the newly born state of Israel by innumerable religious and ethnic ties, and both were accepted by the CCAR in the Miami Platform of 1997. So that is pretty much what we are told that Zionism is all about, an international movement originally for the establishment of a Jewish national or religious community in Palestine, and later for the support of modern Israel. Now let's drill down deeper into this subject and see what comes up. The Mormons are Zionist as well, and actually say there was an ancient civilization of Israelites in the Americas. Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism and the Latter-day Saint movement, believed that the entirety of the Americas was Zion, and that the American tribes were descended from the Hebrew tribes of Israel. Was the founding of the Mormon Church what is defined as controlled opposition? Controlled opposition is a strategy in which an individual, organization, or movement is covertly controlled or influenced by a third party, and the controlled entity's true purpose is something other than its publicly stated purpose. The controlled entity serves a role of mass deception, surveillance, or political and social manipulation. The controlled party is portrayed as being in opposition to the interest of the controlling party. From all of my research, documented in my blog posts and videos, it sure looks to me like the early Mormon leaders were also involved in the creation of the new civilization and narrative, as well as Catholic orders like the Jesuit and Franciscan missionaries, the hierarchy of the Roman Catholic Church, and the royal houses of Europe. And their secret activities involved with the creation of the New World Order were carried out with the involvement of the highest echelons of secret societies, including the Freemasons, Odd Fellows, the Knights of Pythias, and the Skull and Bones Society. I think Zionism is the vehicle by which the world's controllers, known by names such as the Illuminati, Cabal, Globalist Elite, and Bilderbergers, that planned and executed the corporate structure for their global takeover of the world's finances, resources, and people. They are a small number of related elitist family bloodlines, hidden in different nationalities and religions, to carry out their plans for world domination. There is a lot more to all of this, but this is the nutshell version of what I have found in my research. I want to end this by saying I personally believe the world's elitist controllers will not get away with what they have done, and I see that more and more people are awakening.